Hello, everyone. Welcome to WWD Episode 4. We're going to be looking at the Vikings Eagles Thursday night game and all the impacts it had in terms of our league this week. Kicking things off, we had me against Mr. Steeler Girl. Steeler Girl didn't have anyone starting, at least. I'll check the bench after. Um, I had A.J. Brown, who underperformed severely from a fantasy point of view. However, I'm not concerned at all. Me and PMC Wagner were actually just talking about it. He had 2 touchdowns that easily just got called back. I don't see that being a problem in the long term. But it is still very good news for Mr. Steeler Girl at this week, or for this week at least. Um, Mr. Steeler Girl actually did have Harrison Smith, who did okay, nothing special. He didn't do bad though on his bench. So overall, that's okay news. Probably the okayest news Mr. Steeler Girl's ever had. We had Scrambled and waggled, who had Greg Joseph go into the red. Now, I know kickers don't matter much, but it's really looking like this Vikings offense is so good that they're either always going to be scoring a touchdown or just punting. I don't think Greg Joseph has scored a field goal yet this year. I could be wrong. Okay, he has 1 field goal from week 1. Overall, I would check other kickers out there off of free agency. I know, for example, we'll talk about him later. Um, the kicker for Philadelphia has actually been doing amazing, getting field goals left and right. So if you're scrambled and waggled, you might want to consider that, not because Greg Joseph is a bad kicker, just because these Vikings just seem to be kicking only extra points. I don't think either of you had anyone on the bench. Pussy and Jaybay. Pussy actually benched Kirk Cousins, which wasn't a bad move in theory. Both Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison actually outperformed everyone's expectations last year. Darius Slay did really good against Jefferson. This year, not so much. But overall, there is one thing I want to mention, and that's that the left tackle, the Pro Bowl left tackle for the Vikings, did get carted off. So that might be something for concern for future weeks, but Kirk Cousins played really well. The receivers played really well. Jordan Addison drew a lot of attention off of Jefferson. So overall, it was a very good week for Kirk Cousins. So overall, you can't really say anything bad there other than you benched him. For most of Gainwell was out, so there isn't really much to say other than DeAndre Swift looked really good, so Gainwell will probably get less opportunity with the balls as the weeks go on. But other than that, there's really not much to talk about. Here we had the matchup of the week. As you see, they're both in green. They're both doing very well. You had Justin Jefferson on the side of big yawners, being Justin Jefferson, putting up 26 points. TJ Hawkinson had a very good game, 25 points at the tight end position. I remember I said in the other video I didn't think Hawkinson was going to do that great this week. I was wrong. He ended up doing fantastic. The whole Vikings offense did fantastic. Jordan Addison, he did very good, and he's been doing very good from a fantasy point of view. There is one thing that concerns me, and that's that he only had 3 catches on the game. I would really hope to be seeing more consistent targets out of him. But overall, he's still able to crank out the points, so heck, what am I to say? And then you made a really good move, Ricktatorship, in benching Philadelphia's defense. That was a very good move because obviously they underperformed and the Vikings offense did really well overall. So that was a pretty good move. I think Washington's defense will end up doing better for you. Philly's defense did look lost out there at a lot of points, I will say. It might have just been the Vikings being really good, but there was a lot of points where Philadelphia's secondary specifically, not necessarily their corners, their safeties and their, let's say, third corners, not their first two, their third and after, like going against the slot receivers, just looked awful. Their linebackers, too. Their linebackers and the secondary on Philadelphia was looking very bad, to say the least, but overall, the D-line and the corners were looking really good, though. Next, we had Karen's husband, who had Alex Madison only score 5 points. Alex Madison actually would have done not a lot better, but he would have been to the okay range of, like, say, 10 points or so. But he actually fumbled the ball twice in tonight's game. Yeah, it's not looking great. Not for Alex Madison, at least. He wasn't getting many targets. He wasn't really doing much. He was just kind of taking what he could get here and there and then fumbling left and right. I could really see these Vikings trying to trade for Jonathan Taylor because, man, Madison is not looking good out there. On the flip side, you had PMC with Devontae Smith, who we already talked in detail about it, but I'll tell everyone else. Um, you had the Eagles, who pretty much just pounded the ball down the Vikings' throats, and they had such bad linebacker play that they had to draw the safeties, such as Harrison Smith, as you saw from Big Yawner, or not Big Yawners, Mr. Steeler Girl. They had to draw him. They had to draw the other safety. They had to draw everyone down to constantly be pressing up on these running backs because the linebackers were just getting bullied out there. The D line was getting, they were getting pummeled pretty bad, to be honest, by that Eagles O line. So that just meant, what's his name? I'm already forgetting. Devontae Smith was able to just break off and have a whole bunch of huge plays down the field and get wide open left and right. So overall, big night for him. Huge night for him. He's doing really well. I don't think either of you had anyone on the bench. Overall, it's just a very good sign for PMC. Now, Booty had Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, and the entire fucking Eagles offense. But no, Jalen Hurts went in there, did his thing, did really good. He had a few touchdowns called back. Could have done even better, like I was saying earlier. You had Dallas Goedert, who did okay. At least he's not getting shut out like he did week 1, so overall, you can't really complain, but it's nothing special. Although I will say he did get that without scoring a single touchdown. So he scores a touchdown. Suddenly, this okay week goes from being really good. So overall, not really much to complain about. That's about solid. DeAndre Swift, though, as we were saying, pounded the shit out of the ball and did really fucking good. DeAndre Swift, fantastic week for him. I will say I'm a little concerned on if he'll be able to continue this with the return of Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell mixing things in. But overall, DeAndre Swift as a player did very good tonight. Yeah, Josh Sweat, I think all of his points came from 1 sack, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check. Yeah, 1 sack and a forced fumble. Josh Sweat's a little concerning here because he was lined up on the left tackle that got hurt. And he was actually still not able to do too much on the backup left tackle. It was 1 sack that he had, and then he did make a few QB hits as well at the beginning of the game. But all night he was going up against an injured left tackle as it was, and then he got carted off the field, went up against the backup, and didn't do much. I would be a little concerned over Josh Sweat, but if he's putting up fantasy points, oh well. I believe Davenport missed the game. I could be wrong. I don't think he actually played. I didn't see him out there when I was playing, or when he was going out, so I can't really say much there. You just kind of didn't catch that he wasn't playing, or I don't know why Yahoo had him as questionable. Yeah, I didn't even see him out there, to be honest. And I think that's all you guys had. So overall, very good news for Booty. Very good news for PMC. Bad news for Karen and MILF. Big Yawners and Ricktatorship both had good news. They're getting ready for this shootout. Bad news for Scrambled and waggled, but it's not the worst news. And then bad news for me, but I'm still not too concerned with it from the long run. Now let's go look over at the actual game. We had a shootout game in this game. The first half was actually a pretty low-scoring game, but it kind of started skyrocketing in the second half. The first half was a lot of good defensive plays by both teams. The second half was kind of a shootout. Overall, it pretty much went like this. The Eagles just had a way better O-line than the Vikings had D-line. They just pounded the ball in the run game until Smith got open, then they'd pass to Smith. They'd get to the goal line or in like a short yard situation and just pound it with Jalen Hurts. Overall, they pretty much just did whatever they wanted to this Vikings defense. The Vikings offense was very good and kept them in it through the whole thing pretty much. Justin Jefferson did his thing, just went out there and cooked up. Jordan Addison made a few big plays. TJ Hawkinson went out there and made a few big plays. Alex Madison was horrible, though. The Vikings O-line struggled against the Eagles D-line overall. It was mostly the defensive tackles, Jalen Carter and Jamin Davis and Fletcher Cox, that were doing this. Overall, it was a very good game, one of the best games you'll probably see on a Thursday night this year. It was very fun to watch. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to mention out of all that. Yeah, not too much. Both teams look pretty good. It was a good shootout, and both sides had good offense and defensive plays. You had Kirk Cousins, who looked very good, even though he was under pressure all night. Kirk Cousins actually went out there and looked like Patrick Mahomes. He actually was doing phenomenal. And then, like I said, the running game was just non-existent for Minnesota. Jefferson did great. Hawkinson did great. KJ Osborne had a touchdown and some yards and catches. He did drop quite a few. So I will say I would take a look at him. He's probably not going to be consistent on a weekly basis, but take a look at him in fantasy if you need an option. He might be an occasional blow up game type of guy where he gets like say 6 points and then maybe a touchdown to make him look pretty good. Um and then Madison had a few catches to somewhat redeem it, but like I said, he fumbled the ball twice. He really didn't do good. Defense, to kick things off, you look at Jordan Hicks here. This guy, in terms of linebackers on free agency, is the cream of the crop for what you can get. This guy is probably the absolute best linebacker on free agency that I could recommend to anyone if anybody's interested, not only with them losing Eric Kendricks to the Chargers. He's their main tackler now. I thought it might be Harrison Smith, but it's looking like it's going to be him. He had a bad week 1, but this week he did phenomenal yet again. So overall, he's a very good linebacker to have in fantasy if you're needing another linebacker or even just a backup, whatever you might need. I would recommend him. Harrison Phillips is a guy I didn't think would really do much this year, but throughout the first 2 weeks, he hasn't necessarily been putting up a lot of sacks. He's been putting up a shit ton of tackles and assists. That is a very good sign. Keep a close eye on him if you want a defensive lineman. He has been doing very good. Yeah, overall, just keep an eye on him. I don't know if he'll be consistent or not. We'll have to wait a while to see. Or if you have an extra bench spot, you can pick him up and try. But overall, he did very good. Now, Bynum, just because he had all those tackles, that's not a good thing. All that means is he was sitting there getting cooked by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith all day. He was just getting bullied. That's all he was there for. He was just making the tackles after he was getting cooked. That's not really something you want in fantasy. You had Daniil Hunter, who, if you started him, congratulations. Enjoy your like 50 fantasy points. That's not going to be something that happens every week. But damn, he went out there and he bullied Jordan Mailata. He was struggling against Lane Johnson, the right tackle of Philly, but when he went against the left tackle, yeah, he should have bullied him. Metellus might be the new Eric Kendricks. He was getting a lot of tackles just like Jordan Hicks, so keep an eye out on him as well. But I do think Jordan Hicks is better for now. Like I said, I think he's the cream of the crop when it comes to linebackers on free agency. Other than that, I don't really think there's much to mention on the Vikings here. Yeah, there isn't really much worth mentioning. Oh, there's one thing. The Vikings could have actually won this game, but they were killed by turnovers. I believe they fumbled the ball 3 times or so. It wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault or anything. It was the special teams mixed with the receiving core. Also, Osborne did drop a few balls as well that were pretty easy catches. Looking at the Eagles side of things, it was kind of weird seeing Hurts tonight because he was doing really good with the ball. He made one bad throw, but they really weren't trying to be explosive with a lot of stuff. They were just kind of setting up the safe game with the run game, and they weren't really going for any crazy shots, which isn't bad, but in terms of fantasy isn't ideal, but oh well, it's just something that makes sense in terms of real life, but isn't the greatest news to hear in fantasy. DeAndre Swift did phenomenal. 28 yards or 28 carries, 175 yards, 6 yards per carry, a touchdown. Phenomenal. That's exactly what you want. Like that is the best thing you could ever ask for in fantasy. There was so many running backs here that's kind of concerning, but overall the running game was just phenomenal. DeAndre Swift did really good. I think you might have something to look forward to. Booty. Hurts had 2 scrambling touchdowns, which kind of made his lackluster passing night from a fantasy point of view a lot better. Kind of fixed it. Other than that, there isn't really much to say about any of these other running backs. Smith did really good, but it is concerning that, like the other guy, it is concerning he only had 4 catches. Same with A.J. Brown. But A.J. Brown did have a lot more opportunities taken off of him, like we talked about earlier. Goddard went 6 for 22. Swift had a few catches, but they didn't really do much. Keep an eye on Zach Cunningham. He could be their main tackler now that T.J. Edwards is gone. Other than that, I don't think I'd really recommend anyone on this Eagles individual defense. Like I said overall earlier, I already talked about them for the most part. But other than that, the IDB part of things, just keep an eye on Zach Cunningham. He could be a good tackler or a good linebacker later on. He's very injury prone though. Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I don't know if I'm going to release a video or not tomorrow. I guess we'll see. Have a good one.